بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh. Once again, thank you for having me here, for welcoming me at Apex Masjid. I've been here numerous times, but I want to thank you again for welcoming me once again. This is a very important topic. Side note, I do not have children. So those of you who do have children, God bless and may God be with you. And this is, I can offer some words of advice, but you guys are practicing it. So inshallah, the questions are, how does the messenger, peace and blessings be upon him, how did he interact with the children in his family and his young followers, which were around him? Let me bring this down a little, I'm a little shorter. And then how can we today ensure that we pass that baton of faith successfully to the next generation? This idea of raising children is not one which only we're concerned with, right? Everybody has children. It's not an issue which only we deal with as Muslims. It transcends religion and it transcends culture. It's a topic that we can have with others in our community as well. And it is a blessing, right? Al-malu wal-banuna zinatul hayat ad-dunya. So it's a blessing on this earth. It's a gift. So if you do have children, this is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because it is a gift and because it is a blessing, with blessings come great responsibilities. So let's take the Prophet subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm kind of going to tackle this into two main topics. The first being how we should be, based off of how the Prophet subhanahu wa ta'ala, peace and blessings be upon him, was. And then the second is, how do we implement that? How do we implement that in today's society, in the American society that we live in? So without question, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, Sayyidina Muhammad, was an extraordinary man. He exemplified all human qualities that we would all love to have. And everybody who knows him loves him, regardless of what faith it is. Everybody who, before he was even a messenger, everybody who knew him loved him. Why was he so loved? And why was he so popular? And in this particular case, why was he so popular amongst the children? So to give you what I mean, we all sort of know, but if we take it into perspective and we think about it, the Prophet became a prophet when he was 40 years old. So he wasn't a young man, he wasn't old either, but he wasn't young. He was 40. And then he lived in Mecca from 40 to 53 years old, and then that's when he went to Medina until he was 63 years old. So we're talking about a 40 to 63-year-old man who made friends, who made children friends. He made friends out of children, and these are he called them companions. These are the Sahaba we look up to. But when we think of a Sahaba, growing up, I used to think, these old wise men with white beards, but these were young men. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu was 10 when he met the Prophet. So this was a 10-year-old boy who grew up to be 103, and we have a lot of our hadiths that we learn about our young companions from him. So if he was 10 years old when he met the Prophet ﷺ, when the Prophet was 53 years old, that means he only had about 10 years to spend with the Messenger. That means he spent from 10 years old to 20 years old. And this was an extraordinary Sahabi, a companion. But when we think of him as much older. We don't think of this young boy. So then the Prophet ﷺ respected these boys. He respected these children and these girls. But they were just children, right? Whom the Prophet, he befriended, he loved, he respected, he nurtured, and it was all for good reason. So then why is it today that we have difficulties doing that with our children? So some characteristics of who Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, where he had a comforting and gentle face. And that's very important when dealing with children, right? I mean, I don't know of a child who's going to approach an adult who looks angry. And Abdullah bin Harith radiallahu anhu said, I did not see anyone who smiled more than the Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Al-Bara said that he was asked if the Prophet ﷺ's face was like that of a sword. And he said, no, it was like that of the moon. And we all know that we can't really, while the sun is beautiful, we can't really stare up at it. But the moon is special. You can look up at it, right? When you're in darkness, right, you have the moon as your light. You have your moon as guidance. It helps guide you. So imagine that description, that the Prophet ﷺ's face was like that of the moon. So you can imagine that children were attracted to that quality. When you have the Prophet ﷺ approaching you as a child, that's a gentle face. That's a face that, okay, I can trust this face. So that's a very important quality. The second being that he had an appropriate approach. When he approached children, one, he knew he was speaking to a child. While he respected them and he was nurturing them and such, he knew that he was speaking to a child, so he spoke at their level. And it wasn't a way of looking down upon them. He just knew that, he's not going to come up to a child and talk to him about something which is far greater than his years, or something which that child is not worrying himself or herself about. And he would place his hand on their heads or their faces. It was a gentle approach. It was an approach of, we're somewhat equals. And he also spoke clearly, and it was with whomever, and he spoke appropriately, whether it was a different gender, whether he was speaking to females, whether he was speaking to somebody of a different educational background, whether it was somebody of a different faith, whether it was somebody of different age. He knew how he spoke to every single person that he spoke to, and that's important, as we all know that communication is key. Third, he smelled pleasant. And we know that scent is a form of memory. It is the strongest form of memory that we have. And just think about it. If you're, sometimes you're like out somewhere and you smell something and you're like, this reminds me of something. I don't quite sure what, but my nose remembers. So imagine he smelled pleasant, and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum remembered that smell as him smelling pleasant. And he was merciful. He is the messenger of Ar-Rahman, so of course his heart was full of mercy. He would shorten prayers, for example, when he would hear a child cry. He didn't like hearing children cry, and second of all, he would put mothers at ease, because as mothers know, I mean, usually they're the ones taking care of their children during prayer. When your child is crying, you feel like you're disturbing everybody. You sort of get embarrassed. My second example is that of Abu Umair. He was, radiallahu anhu, he was Anas ibn Malik's brother. He was his younger brother. And he had this little bird, this little sparrow called An-Nughair. And one day, everybody knew that he had this little bird, including the Prophet ﷺ. And this was Anas ibn Malik's younger brother. That means he was younger than Anas ibn Malik, who was 10 years old at the time. He heard that he heard that he was sad. He asked why, and the companions told him that the bird had passed away. Thank you. So he went to Abu Umair, and he said, "Ya Abu Umair, what happened to An-Nughair?" He knew what happened to An-Nughair. He knew it, he was told, but he's trying to approach that child. He's getting close to that child. He's concerned about that child because that child is clearly sad. That pet was very important to that child. And this is the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is someone who concerned himself with the entire ummah. So if we think we're stressed from work and we had this huge load and your child wants to tell you something, and we think, I don't have time, not today. But imagine this is the Prophet ﷺ who concerned himself about us who are sitting here today. So this is a man who was graying because he was concerned about our entire ummah, and he still made time for his younger companions. So I'm sort of gonna fast forward. I only have like 4 minutes left. how should we implement the teachings that we learned from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam? One, we can teach Islam via storytelling. We teach our kids via storytelling. One, when you're telling a story and you're telling it about somebody else, then it takes away, the person who you're telling it to feels safe from criticism. So it's not like, oh, you shouldn't do so-and-so. Let me tell you a story that will teach you a concept. And at the same time, it's going to teach you Islam. And storytelling can start from a very young age. And that way, the child is going to look back and think, oh, I should do this. But they're not necessarily thinking that you're pointing the finger at them. And the Prophet ﷺ used to tell stories to the young companions about the past. And that helped put them at ease as they were going through some very unpleasant times. Second, do not coerce your children. Do not coerce them into, you have to be Muslim. You have to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to love the Prophet ﷺ. They have to do it not out of fear, but out of love. The Prophet ﷺ built love before he started talking about Jahannam and Jannah and hijab and prayer and this and that. These kids loved him first. Once they loved him, he could tell them anything. And so that's very important that you build that trust, that bond with your children. And so going to that is to love and befriend, befriend your children. And by love, the Prophet ﷺ used to kiss his grandchildren and his children publicly. He could have done it at home, and only at home. He used to play with them. He used to kiss them outside because actions mattered, right? And that taught other people how to do it. And we all have heard about the Bedouin who said, I had 10 sons and I had never kissed one of them. And he said it proudly. And that almost disgusted the Prophet ﷺ, like, you don't have mercy in your heart. Empower and build confidence. Empower and build confidence, and that's so important in our American culture because that's what it's built upon. That idea of pride. And your children have to be proud of being Muslim. In order to be proud of being Muslim, they have to be confident of their faith. They have to know it, and they also have to know other faiths so that they know how to counteract it. My mother teaches at Saturday and Sunday school, and she came very upset one day, and I was like, what's wrong? And she's like, I was teaching, it was close to Christmas season, and she asked all the kids, and they're young, and she's like, who loves Jesus? And some of them got up and said, yeah, I do. And then the other kids were like, ew, how do you love Jesus? To them, Jesus is associated with Christmas. So they have to know that Isa alayhi salam is Jesus. They have to know that they love this man. They have to know who he is. And so it's okay for you to teach them about other religions too. That matters because they live in a society where they deal with that. And then your daughters is when I'm going to speak from the daughter's perspective. I'm the only female speaking about this topic today. The Prophet ﷺ and his relationship with Fatima Zahra radiallahu anha, I can't sit here and talk about it all day, but read upon it, especially if you have a daughter, if you have a female loved one. It was such a very special relationship. Her mother died when she was 5 years old. So imagine, she had one biological father raising her, and they had such a beautiful relationship. When she would walk into the room, he would stand out of respect for her. This is the Prophet ﷺ would stand out of the respect that he had for his daughter. Build confidence in your daughter. Tell her she's beautiful every single day. You cannot not tell your daughter she's beautiful and then tell her to wear the hijab. And now she has self-esteem issues. She doesn't think she's beautiful. And now anybody that comes and calls her beautiful, he called her beautiful. So do you expect her not to be like, oh, he loves me? So this is very, very important. You can't expect her to wear the hijab and have low self-esteem under it, because you have to have confidence in order to wear the hijab. You're taking away some of that beauty by wearing hijab, right? So if you know somebody who wears the hijab, or your loved one, your daughter, your sister, tell them they're beautiful every single day. That is the relationship the Prophet ﷺ had with Fatima Zahra radiallahu anha. I'm sorry, they shouldn't have let me go first. Just give me one more second. And I'm trying to rush this. Know what you're dealing with. Right, and I hate to compare us to lions because I don't think we go out there and prey, like catch prey. But when animals teach their young ones how to survive, they know the terrain, right? They know what they're dealing with. The lion does not show its cub how to hunt, and he has no idea what he's hunting, or so on and so forth, what he's catching. So you have to know the community you live in. You have to get out there and know what it is, because you can't have a conversation with your child when you don't know what they're dealing with on the outside. And we love to talk about the ideals, and we love to set rules and obstacles, and talk about this ideal world, that the Muslims were this and the Muslims are that, and the Sahaba were like this or like that. But the Prophet ﷺ lived during a time where prostitution existed, alcoholism existed, drug abuse existed, hostels existed. He lived in a community where not everybody was perfect, not everybody was Muslim, not everybody was pleasant. And so we only teach the pleasant stuff, but you have to understand that Rasulullah knew what he was dealing with. And so you have to know what you're dealing with. You have to know what your children are dealing with. And I'm not going to say any more, because we ran out of time, and I think the guys will take care of it, inshallah. Like I said, if you have children, God bless. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be with you and be with them. And may the Prophet ﷺ, may we be deserving of his love, and may we love him more and more, and may our children love him more. Inshallah. نقول قولي هذا جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.